Ex-wife asked for open marriage. That was the red flag. Hey, true story. My name is Larry. This is my story about how my ex-wife, someone I truly thought was my forever, turned out to be my biggest life lesson. How it all started. I met my ex-wife in downtown Los Angeles back in 2016. What's crazy is that we were both from Washington State, but somehow, fate, or maybe bad luck, brought us to LA at the exact same time. We were both there on separate trips with our own groups of friends. It was one of those random weekend getaways, no plans, just good vibes, late nights, and spontaneous adventures. That Saturday night, my friends and I ended up at a rooftop bar near the Staples Center. The city lights looked like stars had fallen to earth. I remember hearing laughter coming from the group next to us, and that's when I saw her. She had this contagious energy, laughing hard at something one of her friends said, her hair catching the light just right. I'd seen beautiful women before, but there was something about her that felt magnetic, like she could make a room brighter just by being in it. We ended up talking that night after she overheard me joking about how LA drinks were overpriced. She laughed, agreed, and we started a conversation that lasted the rest of the night. The more we talked, the more coincidences we discovered. Both from Washington, both visiting for the weekend, both staying in hotels within walking distance of each other. It felt too perfect. By the end of the night, we exchanged numbers and promised to link up again before heading home. And we did. Sunday brunch turned into a walk around Venice Beach, which turned into an afternoon that neither of us wanted to end. When we both flew back to Washington, I thought that would be the end of it. But she texted me on the plane, saying she couldn't stop thinking about me. That was all it took. We started dating long distance within a week. The early days. The first 2 years were great. Everything was light, exciting, and easy. We made weekend trips to see each other. We'd meet halfway in Portland sometimes, or one of us would fly out. She made me feel alive, like the world had opened up again after years of just going through the motions. After 2 years of dating, we got serious and started talking about the future. I proposed to her at a small vineyard in Oregon. She cried, hugged me, and said I was her soulmate. I remember thinking I'd found my unicorn, a loyal, loving woman who had my back, who wanted to build a life with me. I had no idea that the same woman would later betray me in ways I couldn't have imagined. Marriage and the rose-colored glasses. Looking back, I wish I hadn't been wearing those rose-colored glasses. There were red flags, I just didn't see them. Or maybe I refused to. She had a temper when things didn't go her way. She liked attention, especially online. I told myself that was just her being social. She liked to post selfies, dance clips, and flirty captions. I didn't like it, but I thought, it's harmless. She loves me. When we got married in 2019, I made it my mission to make her happy. I thought that was what being a good husband meant. Providing, protecting, and saying yes more than no. Whatever she wanted, I found a way to give it to her. I worked extra hours. I took her to fancy restaurants. I even agreed to things I didn't enjoy just to keep her smiling. I thought giving her everything she wanted would give us peace. Instead, it just fed her appetite for more. The struggles. About 3 years into our marriage, life got harder. I was working for a construction company, and the hours were long but steady. Then, when pandemic hit, work slowed down. The projects dried up. My income dropped, and suddenly, the life we'd built, our nice apartment, the dinners out, the weekend trips, started to feel like a financial burden. I remember sitting her down one night and saying, "Look, things are tight right now. I need you to help out for a little while until work picks up again." She didn't like hearing that. She'd always been proud of not needing to work, and the idea of clocking in anywhere seemed beneath her. But after a few arguments, she finally agreed to drive for Uber. She said she wanted flexible hours and freedom. At first, I thought that was a fair compromise. She could work when she wanted, bring in some money, and help us get back on track. But that's when everything changed. Her change in behavior. As soon as she started driving for Uber, she changed. I'm not talking about just mood swings, I mean her entire demeanor shifted. She became cold, distant, defensive. She used to be affectionate, always checking in, sending little texts during the day. Suddenly, her messages stopped. When she was home, she was either on her phone or too tired to talk. I brushed it off at first, thinking she was just adjusting to the schedule. But something in my gut told me this wasn't normal. Then came the attitude. Every conversation turned into an argument. She'd snap at me over small things, like asking what time she'd be home or if she wanted me to make dinner. She started complaining that we never traveled anymore. I reminded her we were just getting back on our feet, but she said since she was working now, we could afford it. She'd roll her eyes whenever I suggested a local getaway. Larry, she'd say, we always go to the same boring places. Don't you want to experience life? It wasn't the same woman I married. The warmth was gone. She looked at me differently, like she was bored, like I was holding her back. The day she asked for an open marriage, I'll never forget that day. It was a Sunday afternoon. We'd just come back from grocery shopping, and she seemed irritated the whole time. I asked what was wrong, and she said, I'm just tired of this same routine. It feels like we're just roommates. I tried to lighten the mood, but she was dead serious. Then she said it. I think we should try an open marriage. At first, I laughed because I thought she was joking, but when I saw the look in her eyes, I realized she wasn't playing. I asked her what she meant, and she said, I just think it would be healthy for us to explore other people. It might even make us stronger. My heart dropped. I said, absolutely not. She looked shocked, like she didn't expect me to have a backbone. Then she crossed her arms and said, well, that's how it's going to be. You can either accept it or we'll have to figure something else out. It wasn't a request. It was a demand. When I stood my ground, she broke down crying. She said I was controlling, that I didn't understand her, that she just wanted to feel alive again. I thought that was the end of it after I refused, but in hindsight, that was just the beginning. Trying harder, my biggest mistake. After that conversation, I did what a lot of men in denial do. I tried harder. I thought if I just showed her how much I loved her, she'd snap out of whatever phase she was in. I started planning more date nights, buying her flowers, cooking dinner, cleaning more, complimenting her even when she was cold to me. I thought I could love her out of her selfishness, but you can't fix someone who doesn't want to be fixed. Her Uber driving hours started getting weird. She'd leave the house around 6 p.m. and sometimes not come home until 3 a.m. She'd say she was doing airport runs or late night bonuses. But one night, around 1 a.m., I checked the Uber app using the family account we used to track mileage for taxes. She wasn't driving. There were no trips showing up at all. That's when the first real doubt hit me. The truth comes out. For about 2 weeks, I kept quiet. I wanted to be sure before accusing her of anything. I watched her closely. Her attitude, her schedule, her stories. They didn't add up. One night, I asked her casually where she'd been driving. She snapped, "Why are you always questioning me?" I didn't push further, but something in me broke that night. I realized I was married to someone who no longer respected me enough to even pretend to care. A week later, she said she was going out to drive again, but that gut feeling wouldn't let me rest. Something told me, follow her. I waited about 10 minutes after she left, grabbed my keys, and drove the route I knew she usually took. I stayed far behind, careful not to get too close. I felt sick doing it, like I was betraying myself for having to spy on my own wife. After about 20 minutes, she pulled into a gas station parking lot. Then a black truck pulled up next to her. She got out of her car, walked straight to the truck, and got in. My stomach dropped. I didn't need to see more, but I stayed parked across the street anyway. They sat there for about 15 minutes before the truck drove off, with her still inside. I followed at a distance. They parked behind a closed store. The lights in the truck went off. I sat there in silence, gripping the steering wheel so hard my hands hurt. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there in shock, watching the woman I thought was my soulmate betray me in the most humiliating way possible. After about an hour, she got back in her car and drove home. I followed her, but didn't go inside right away. I parked down the street, sat in the car, and made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her. I was going to end it quietly and legally. The plan. The next morning, I found a divorce lawyer online and scheduled a consultation. I didn't tell her. I kept my calm, acted normal, even kissed her goodbye before she left for work. But while I was waiting for the paperwork to get started, I followed her 2 more times. Both times, she met the same man. Same truck, same routine. That confirmed everything. There was no misunderstanding. No, it's not what it looks like. It was exactly what it looked like. Where things stand now, I haven't confronted her yet, not directly. I'm waiting until everything is finalized and she gets served. I've moved my personal belongings into a storage unit and opened a new bank account. She has no idea I know. I'm writing you this first part of my story because I know a lot of men are probably in the same position right now, confused, heartbroken, trying to make sense of why the woman they love suddenly turned into a stranger. I get it. I've been there. I'm still there, technically. But one thing I've learned through this is that a woman who demands an open marriage doesn't want to explore. She wants permission to betray you without guilt. She was never asking for freedom. She was asking for validation to cheat. And I can't give her that. True story. I ask that you don't read this email publicly yet. This is only part 1. I'm still in the middle of the process, and I want to tell you the full story once everything is said and done. Part 2 will cover how she got served, how the divorce unfolded, and what life looked like after it all ended. I know it's going to get worse before it gets better, but I'm ready. Because the version of me that accepted disrespect and betrayal is gone. The days leading up. After catching her the 3rd time with that same guy, I felt something in me go numb. That night, when she came home and casually dropped her purse on the counter, humming like nothing had happened, I realized that confronting her wasn't worth it. I'd spent years giving her all my love, my loyalty, my time, and in return, she gave me disrespect. She didn't deserve my anger anymore. I was done giving her energy. My lawyer told me we'd need a solid plan since we still lived together. He advised me to quietly prepare, gather financial records, make copies of everything, secure my personal assets, and document everything I'd seen. That week, I moved most of my clothes into a storage unit I rented under a different name. I told her I was decluttering to make the house look better. She didn't even question it. That's how self-absorbed she'd become. She was still working her so-called Uber shifts, but I stopped checking. I didn't need to anymore. I already knew who she was. The night before she got served, the night before the papers were served, she was unusually cheerful. She made dinner, something she hadn't done in weeks, and even asked if I wanted to watch a movie. It was almost eerie. Maybe deep down she sensed something was coming. As we sat on the couch, she leaned her head on my shoulder, the same shoulder that had carried all her emotional weight for years, and said, "You've been quiet lately. Everything okay?" I just looked at her for a long second before saying, "Everything's fine." She smiled, kissed my cheek, and went back to scrolling on her phone. I remember thinking, tomorrow, all of this ends, the day she got served. My lawyer arranged for her to be served while she was home. I didn't want her causing a scene in public, and I didn't want to risk her embarrassing me at work or in front of neighbors. That morning, she was in the kitchen, in her robe, drinking coffee. I was sitting across the room, pretending to read emails on my laptop. My heart was pounding, but I didn't show it. Then came the knock at the door. She opened it, still holding her mug. When the process server handed her the envelope, she looked confused. "What's this?" she asked. He said, "You've been served," and walked away. I watched her expression change from confusion to disbelief. She turned to me and said, "Larry, what the hell is this?" I stayed seated and said calmly, "It's exactly what it looks like. Divorce papers." She dropped the mug. It shattered on the tile. She just stood there, trembling, her face turning pale. "You're divorcing me? For what?" That line right there, "for what?" told me everything I needed to know. After everything she'd done, she still played dumb, still acted like the victim. I said, "You know why. Don't insult my intelligence." She started crying, saying, "I thought we were okay. You said everything was fine." I said, "Yeah, that's what you said when you were sneaking around behind my back too, right?" Her mouth opened, but no words came out. For once, she was speechless. She tried the usual tactics: tears, guilt, emotional manipulation, but it didn't work anymore. I told her I was moving out, that the marriage was over, and that I already had legal representation. She went from crying to screaming, "You can't just throw away our marriage like this." That's when I looked her dead in the eye and said, "You did that the moment you started lying to me." The aftermath. That day was chaos. G started calling her friends, crying and spinning the story like I was the villain. According to her, I was heartless and gave up on the marriage. She left out the part about cheating, of course. She packed a few bags and went to stay with one of her friends. I didn't stop her. The silence that followed her leaving was the most peaceful sound I'd heard in years. But don't let me fool you. That peace didn't mean it didn't hurt. I'd be lying if I said it didn't. There were nights when the loneliness hit like a freight train. I'd walk past the empty bedroom and think about how just a few years ago that space felt full of life. I'd lay awake wondering how I could have missed the signs. But the pain also sharpened my focus. I used it to remind myself of what I would never tolerate again. The divorce process. Anyone who's been through a divorce knows it's not quick or easy. There's the paperwork, the waiting, the mediation, the lawyers, the property division. She tried to make it messy at first, claimed she was owed spousal support because she'd sacrificed to support my career. My lawyer shut that down fast. He presented documentation showing her infidelity, and once she saw that I wasn't bluffing, her tone changed. Suddenly, she wanted to end things peacefully. Of course she did. When the evidence is stacked against them, they always pivot to, "Let's just be adults about this." I agreed, but not out of kindness, out of strategy. I wanted it done. We went through mediation where she tried to guilt me into reconsidering. She even cried during one of the sessions, saying, "I just made mistakes, Larry. Everyone makes mistakes." I looked at her and said, "Yeah, but not everyone sleeps with someone else in a truck while their husband's at home trying to make ends meet." The mediator had to pause the session because she started yelling. I stayed calm. The old me would have argued, but I'd already detached. There's a special kind of peace that comes when you stop reacting. By the time it was finalized, I felt like a new man. The day it became official. When I got the call from my lawyer saying the divorce was finalized, I was sitting in my truck, parked outside a job site. It was a strange feeling, part relief, part sadness, but mostly freedom. I sat there for a long time, just breathing. It felt like I'd been holding my breath for years and finally exhaled. I didn't celebrate with friends or family. I didn't go out. I just went home, cracked open a beer, and sat on my balcony, watching the sun go down. And you know what? That sunset looked different. Not because the sky changed, but because I did. The attempt to come back. It didn't take long before she tried to come back. About a month after the divorce was finalized, she texted me late at night. Hey, can we talk? I ignored it. The next day she called. I didn't answer. She called again, then again. Finally, she left a voicemail. She was crying, saying she missed me, that she made a mistake, that the guy wasn't what she thought. She said she realized I was the only man who ever truly loved her. Typical. When men walk away and rebuild, that's when they want to come crawling back. She sent long paragraphs about how she'd changed, how she was in therapy, and how she just wanted closure. I didn't respond. You can't heal while reopening wounds. The reality check. A few weeks later, mutual friends started telling me she was struggling, couch surfing, working odd jobs, trying to keep up appearances on social media. She was posting cryptic quotes about betrayal and karma. It took everything in me not to comment. You're right. Karma's real and you're living it. But I stayed quiet. Silence is the best revenge. Then one day I ran into her at a grocery store. It had been nearly 6 months since the divorce. She looked tired, like life had finally caught up to her. She saw me, froze for a second, then tried to smile. Hey, Larry, she said softly. I nodded and said, Hey. We talked briefly, mostly small talk. She asked how I was doing. I said, better than ever. She smiled sadly and said, You look good. I thanked her and walked away. I didn't owe her closure. That moment was the closure. The healing process. The hardest part wasn't letting her go. It was forgiving myself, for ignoring the red flags, for believing that love meant sacrifice, even when that sacrifice destroyed me. After she was gone, I had to face the uncomfortable truth that I enabled her behavior. I made excuses for her when I should have drawn boundaries. I confused loyalty with weakness. So I took time to rebuild, physically, mentally, emotionally. I hit the gym again, started eating better, and picked up old hobbies I'd abandoned. I went fishing more and reconnected with family. I realized how much of my world had revolved around her and how much I'd lost myself trying to keep her happy. The peace that followed was something I can't describe. It wasn't instant. Healing takes time, but every day without her chaos was another layer of peace added to my life. Lessons learned. If there's one thing I've learned from this experience, it's that love without respect is manipulation. A woman who truly loves you won't demand to share you. She won't try to make you question your worth or gaslight you when you call out her lies. Men, if you're reading this or listening to it on True Story, please hear me. When a woman asks for an open marriage, that's not a request for growth. It's a confession of disloyalty. She's already checked out emotionally. She's just looking for a way to justify her betrayal. Don't beg, don't bargain. Don't try to prove your worth to someone who's already thrown it away. Walk away with your dignity intact, because the moment you choose self-respect, you reclaim your power. Life after divorce. It's been over a year now since everything ended. I've built a new routine, a new mindset, and a new life. I moved into a smaller place closer to work. It's quiet, but I like it that way. I wake up early, hit the gym, work my shifts, and come home to peace. There's no arguing, no lies, no walking on eggshells. Sometimes I still think about her, not because I miss her, but because she reminds me how much I've grown. I realized I don't need validation from anyone to feel whole. I don't need to be married to feel like a man. I just need peace. A message to the next man. I don't know what happened to the guy she cheated with, but I heard through the grapevine that it didn't last. Apparently, he had his own family, and once she started pushing for commitment, he disappeared. She gambled her marriage for a man who only saw her as a fling. The irony writes itself, but that's not my concern anymore. The next man who gets involved with her will see the same charm I once did. He'll probably fall for the same lies, the same laugh, the same promises. But eventually, he'll see what's behind the mask. And when he does, maybe he'll remember this story. Maybe he'll recognize the pattern before it's too late. The final reflection. I used to believe that my divorce was the worst thing that ever happened to me. But now I see it as the best thing. It stripped away my illusions, my people-pleasing tendencies, and my fear of being alone. It forced me to rebuild from the ground up. I learned to set boundaries, to trust my instincts, and to never ignore my gut again. If something feels off, it usually is. Now I focus on purpose, not people, on growth, not guilt. My ex thought she was finding freedom when she demanded that open marriage. What she really found was the exit door to her own stability. She lost a man who would have done anything for her, and I gained my peace. Closing thoughts, true story. I want to thank you for reading my emails. I've learned a lot from listening to the stories on your channel. They've reminded me that I'm not alone, that there are countless men out there who've been betrayed, manipulated, and broken down, but still chose to rise above it. This whole experience taught me that sometimes loss is just disguised liberation. When a woman betrays you, she's doing you a favor. She's showing you who she truly is before you waste any more of your time. I've forgiven her, not for her sake, but for mine. Because holding on to anger keeps you stuck in the same chapter. And I'm done rereading a book that already ended. From betrayal to rebirth. And if any man listening to this is where I once was, confused, heartbroken, and afraid to start over, let me tell you something. Starting over is scary, but staying miserable is worse. Walk away. Rebuild. Become someone even you can be proud of. You don't owe anyone another chance to destroy you. Thank you for letting me share my story. This is closure, not just for the marriage, but for that version of me that thought love meant losing myself. I'll never wear those rose-colored glasses again. Larry.